Hey, co-reporters, welcome back to my channel. Listen, Colleen is speaking out after that Love is Blind reunion that had everyone talking. Do you guys remember her body language throughout the entire reunion special? How tense she looked around her husband, Matt. I did a video about it entitled, Is Colleen Okay? I showed you guys videos and everything like that, like some freeze frames from the reunion that showed alarming body language. Psychology Today even did an article about how odd or alarming Matt's body language towards Colleen was. He was hovering over her. She had no personal space. He was cutting her off from seeing the men behind him on the couch, etc., etc. It was all very weird. And I specifically remember sharing, and I think even now, if you go and you type on Twitter, Colleen Love is Blind reunion or anything like that, pretty much 90% of the content that you're going to see is people wondering whether or not this woman is okay. In the Love is Blind Facebook groups, it's like that. In the Love is Blind Reddit pages, it's like that. People felt very uncomfortable. They felt as though Colleen presented herself as someone who was uncomfortable in a hostile relationship. She just gave very, very, very kind of scared vibes. So Colleen has finally had enough of that, you guys. She has taken to her Instagram page to speak out against the narrative that is out there in regards to her relationship and whether or not her husband, Matt, is potentially abusive to her. Remember, we saw some of his behavior already, his outbursts and whatnot on the show. We deemed it as unhealthy. And so now here she is, in her own words, on Instagram. She reposted a clip from the reunion of her and Matt talking about how they still do not live together, and captioned it by saying, "We said what we said. We're doing things our way." So I believe that this still confirms that they are still, as of right now, not living together, which I find interesting because at this point, it's been a year and a half since the show was filmed. So I'm wondering, okay, well, how long are y'all going to take to get around to this, right? Like, is this really something you want to do? I don't know. So she followed it up with a bunch of photos of her and Matt during happy times, going to ball games and stuff like that, parties. This was her birthday party that she had. It was like themed for Halloween and whatnot. And then after that, she shared a link to a Cosmo article about her relationship and her denying that Matt made her uncomfortable or that she looks uncomfortable in general at the reunion. So I figured, you know what? Why don't we get into this story together, you guys, right? So let me just adjust myself so that I am not cutting out the title or anything like that. So here it is. Love is Blind's Colleen Reed response to claim she looked uncomfortable at the reunion. And so here she's going to talk about what actually had her feeling and looking so tense. And it wasn't Matt and why it was not Matt. So Cosmo explicitly calls out what we had been talking about like in our previous video and in the video from today, which is that everybody felt as though Colleen looked uncomfortable. If you search her name on Twitter, if you search the reunion on Twitter, the most spoken about thing outside of Zenab and Cole and like Cutiegate is Colleen and how uncomfortable she looked. People said she looked like a hostage. She looked like a battered wife. She looked like, I don't know. It just did not look good. So she's explaining that going into the reunion, I was not in a good headspace as I was dealing with a lot of anxiety due to the negative commentary I had endured during the first few episodes. While I knew what I had signed up for, at that point, I was not prepared for the gravity of strangers critiquing my profession that I'm incredibly proud of, my character, and tearing down my body/physical traits. Listen, I can totally understand where she's coming from with this. Though I do want to point out one thing. People were not criticizing the fact that she's a ballerina. People were criticizing the fact that being a ballerina was her sole personality trait on the show. She would constantly lead with that in an effort to kind of, attract the men because it's a stereotypically skinny. It's a stereotypical. I'm sorry, you guys. It's a profession for stereotypically skinny people or in shape people. people who are very elegant. They're assumed to be beautiful. And so when you're on a show called Love is Blind and you're leading with that, like, it's kind of like, a little kind of blatant what it is that you're trying to do. And I believe that that's what people were mainly critiquing rather than being a ballerina itself. But I digress. You guys let me know if there was other things going on in the comment section down below. I do agree, though, that it was incredibly unfair the way that people would criticize Colleen's looks in an effort to prop up Zeneb. Zeneb's fiance, Cole, started developing like a crush on Colleen when he saw her. And so he would constantly be kind of like comparing Zeneb to Colleen and whatnot. I personally believe when I did the rewatch that it was mainly because Colleen had a more bubbly personality, but people, in an effort to kind of pick back up Zeneb after Cole would kind of talk about her looks being less attractive than Colleen's, people would dig at Colleen. They'd say things like, well, Colleen is just like any other girl. She's bland. She's this, she's that. Like, certain women are held to a different standard. It's not fair. But, very much comparing her to Zeneb, which was unfair to either one of them. Hold that thought, you guys. We've got a chat coming in from one of my channel members here. My darling Rachel wants to say, in regards to Colleen's ballet, her leading with being a ballerina, that there's also a sexual aspect that she has, hinting at being with a ballerina, which very much is true. And might I add, speaking of like the sexual nature and whatnot, like she kept talking about like being flexible or whatnot. So it's like, girl, like you're really leading with kind of very shallow things. You admit to being a kind of shallow person. So that's mainly what people were talking about rather than crapping on you for being a ballerina. Thank you so much for that comment, by the way, Rachel. So now you guys, I get it. I totally get the stress of Colleen feeling that it's unfair that she was picked apart to be compared to Zeneb. She never asked to be compared to Zeneb. She never compared herself to Zeneb. So that absolutely sucked. She did also say that she was embarrassed to rewatch the pool scene with herself and Cole. And her direct quote was, not only was I dealing with this stress, but I was embarrassed of having to watch the pool scene in front of everyone and having to discuss it. I cherish my friendships with these girls so much. I didn't want my actions to change anything with them or with Matt. I was anticipating more harmful comments as well. You know what the thing is about that pool scene, you guys? I'm sorry, but I didn't see it as that big of a deal. Cole went up to her. He was flirting with her. All she really said back to him was that, yeah, he does look like the kind of guy that she would go up to or try to flirt with, like in the real world. And then she kind of like left it at that. She was not like trying to like get with him or anything like that. So I don't understand why she had to take on the brunt of that. Even when it was discussed at the reunion, what happened? The host kind of asked her mainly, like they kind of like acted like the main culprit in that situation was her, which wasn't fair. It was Cole. Cole even admitted later when he talked to her fiance Matt, well now husband, that Colleen was just basically humoring him. He was the one who was like telling her that he had a crush and this and that Colleen was just like, yeah, like you're attractive as well, and kind of left it at that, which is true. Like, she was not really doing all that much when it came to him. And speaking of that, it was quite frustrating that we didn't even actually get to hear about the fallout from that conversation. So we get the conversation and then we get Colleen looking like she, a fugitive, a hostage, or whatever, next to her husband at the reunion, who's literally hovering over her. But we don't get to hear anything about Matt's actions. We don't get to hear people telling him, listen, Matt, you should not be treating your fiance this way. Like, this was not a good look at you at all, look for you at all. It's not healthy or anything like that. We kind of just like skirted past it. And luckily, Colleen brought it up. She said the same thing. She felt the same way that we did, which is that, listen, I do wish that Matt and I were asked about and discussed our fallouts along with what led us from going to being unsure to saying yes at the altar. Both Matt and I are well past everything and learned from our experience. So then we are very open to talking about it all. I think it would have provided a lot of clarity for the audience. It absolutely would have, especially again, in the context of Colleen looking like this at the reunion. It would have helped to know that they are aware that the behavior on Matt's part was unhealthy. It is something that they've worked through and that they are in a better place. Matt knows how to handle these things better. You know what I mean? Like, it was very bizarre. Remember, in my video about Colleen looking incredibly uncomfortable, I said it comes across as though Matt and his anger problems issued an ultimatum to the show, which is that they can't talk about it. And if they do talk about it, then he's going to walk out, or he's not going to film at all, or something like that. And they oblige, right? Like, that was the only reason that I could imagine. A lot of you guys in the comments also said that there was the possibility that they didn't talk about it in order to protect Colleen. They're like, they know something. A lot of you guys said that the kinetic content and Netflix and all of these people, they know that something is wrong, but that bringing it up could have been kind of detrimental or potentially dangerous to Colleen. And so they chose to kind of just like brush it under the rug, which, you know, in some aspects is good, but in other aspects, it's unhealthy and it's dangerous as well. Like, there really was no winning in that situation. So now with Colleen saying that she as well wishes that they could have talked about it, you do wonder why they didn't. It was something that definitely caused a stir on the internet. So where was that? You know what I mean? Where was that? I absolutely would have loved to see them cover it, but who knows? Anyway, you guys, Colleen really does want us to know that, like, she's good and she feels like things are okay in her relationship. Personally, do I believe her? I have no reason not to believe her, okay? But at the same time, we have seen Matt's behavior for ourselves. So I think it's still fair to kind of, you know, cautiously believe her. I think we do have to take her word for it. But I, you know, keep the stuff in the back of your mind, you know, and just hope for the best at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, Colleen joined the show and did this experiment because she wanted to find love and she wanted to get married. Matt did it for the same reasons as well. And let's hope that that is what they found and that, you know, that lasts at the end of the day. There really is not that much more that I can say other than that. How do you feel about it? Colleen coming out to defend their relationship. One thing I did want to add for you guys actually is, you know how like now that the show is over and whatnot, there are a lot of interviews being done. So Zenab is doing a lot of talking about Cole. Cole is doing a lot of talking about Zenab. Nancy is doing a lot of interviews. Bartiz as well. Alexa and Brennan are doing a lot of interviews and whatnot. Raven and SK as well are doing a lot of interviews. One thing that I noticed that's kind of glaring is the lack of interviews between Colleen and Matt on these outlets. I wonder, were they too busy to do interviews, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe they want to dodge those questions about why they're still not living together after a year and a half of marriage. Who knows? You guys, what do you think? Leave all of your conspiracy theories about that in the comment section down below. And as usual, we'll chat. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.